Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into Ezekiel, the 15th chapter. And as we dealt with in the 16th chapter, actually, not 15. But as we dealt with in the 15th chapter, the Lord was giving Ezekiel an analogy of Israel being likened unto a vine, and more specifically like the wood of a vine, which is pretty much useless for anything like building or anything of that sort, except to be cast into the fire. Okay, and that was the Lord basically expressing how he felt about Jerusalem to Ezekiel at that point. So now we're in the book of Ezekiel chapter 16, and this is a fairly lengthy chapter, but for the most part it deals with the Lord basically telling Ezekiel to speak concerning Jerusalem, and the Lord gives a lot of speaks in a proverbial sense here concerning Israel, or concerning Jerusalem in this case, okay, but more so to highlight their wickedness and their abominations that they've been committing. So let's go through it, and Lord willing, this be edifying to the elect. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 1. Again, the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abominations, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh unto Jerusalem, Thy birth and thy nativity is the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother an Hittite. Now, in this verse, in Ezekiel 16 and 3, dealing with the birth and the nativity, meaning that the quote unquote birthplace, all right, of Israel, it doesn't mean that the Israelites descend from the Canaanites, okay, but what is referring to here is that is basically was the birthplace, okay, of Israel, because when you deal with the father being an Amorite, which is dealing with Abraham, right, and the mother being a Hittite, this does not mean that Abraham was an actual Amorite or he was a Hamite, okay. What it means was that he dwelt in that land, okay. He was an inhabitant of that land. One example is Lot, right? Lot, you could say, was a sodomite, not meaning that he was a sodomite in the sense that he engaged in the act of sodomy, but he was a sodomite in the sense that he was an inhabitant of that land. Okay, keep in mind that the suffix "ite" at the end of a word means pertaining to, or belonging to some degree. Okay, so here it's talking about the land, meaning that thy father here, being Abraham, was an Amorite, meaning he was an inhabitant of that land or that region. Okay, and it mentions it refers to him as the father because of him, right? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob came the nation of Israel. So in this verse, it's not talking about Israelites, being quote unquote related to Hamites, or in that sense, as in being descendants or anything like that. And I believe there might be even another verse that comes to mind faintly. Let me see. Was a Syrian. There we go. This is Deuteronomy 26 and 5. It says, And thou shalt speak and say before the Lord Yahweh thy God, a Syrian ready to perish was my father. And he went down into Egypt and sojourned there with a few, and became there a nation, great, mighty, and populous. Okay, so when you deal with Abraham, for example, the Lord commanding him to leave Ur of the Chaldees, and then they went, him and his family, they went and dwelt in Syria for a period of time, and then the Lord separated Abraham and brought him into the land of Canaan, and then he went down into Egypt. Okay, but he wasn't because the people of Syria are Arameans. They descend from Aram, but Abraham is not an Aramean. Okay, he's not an actual Syrian. So hopefully that makes that a little clear. Going down to verse 4 says, as for thy nativity, in the day thou was born, thy navel was not cut. Now keep in mind that as we're reading here, this is not in a literal sense. Okay, the Lord is speaking here proverbially, or metaphorically, to represent the condition of the nation of Israel and the relationship that he has with them. Okay, so as he says here, as for thy nativity, in the day thou was born, thy navel was not cut, neither was thou washed in water to supple thee. Thou was not salted at all, nor swaddled at all. And this is basically the Lord saying, like, when a baby is born, there are certain things that you do, right, to really take care of that baby and ensure that the baby comes out nice and good. Now let's look into a few words here, and all right, let's look into the word navel. In the Hebrew, we have shar. It says here umbilical cord, right? Which even today they do that. You cut that because that's the cord connecting the baby and the mother, right? So the Lord is saying here, in the day that you were born, nobody cut your umbilical cord, right? You weren't washed in water to be cleaned up, right? It says here, where are we at? We're at verse 4. Neither was thou washed in water to supple thee, thou was not salted at all. Now, salted meaning they actually, there's a custom where they using salt to rub. Like if you rub salt on the skin, it actually makes it stronger, okay, and clean. And also swaddled. Now, when you have babies, like when they put a child in like swaddling clothes or they swaddle a child, they basically like wrap them up. Okay, let's put this up here. Swaddled baby. Yeah, this right here, when they wrap up the baby like that and they quote unquote swaddle them, I believe I forgot when I was reading this, but it's supposed to actually make their bones stronger, basically make them stronger and so on and so forth. If we actually type in swaddled baby, let me see, why are babies swaddled? Yeah, it says here, swaddling is a very common practice for newborns. This can be helpful for a variety of reasons, including a snug swaddling helps babies maintain their body temperature when they are first born. Swaddling can make very young newborns feel more secure and calm as it mimics the tight quarters of the womb. But there's also some other reasons, like I mentioned earlier. I forgot exactly where I read it. It might have been in the manners and customs, of biblical times. But there were a lot of health benefits as to why they would do these things. Okay, so what the Lord is saying here is, well, when you were born, nobody was there to do that for you. Okay, you weren't swaddled, you weren't washed in water, you weren't salted, your navel wasn't cut, you were just left out there. None I pitied thee to do any of these things unto thee, to have compassion upon thee. But thou wast out in the open field, to the loathing of thy person in the day that thou was born. So basically, you were left out there, right? There was nobody there to come take care of you and make sure you were good. And when I passed by thee and saw thee polluted in thine own blood, I said unto thee, when thou wast in thy blood, live. Yea, I said unto thee, when thou wast in thy blood, live. And I caused thee to multiply as the bud of the field, and thou hast increased and waxen great. And thou art come to excellent ornaments. Thy breasts are fashioned, thine hair is grown, whereas thou wast naked and bare. So the Lord is basically saying here, I took you, right, from that destitute state, from just being out there, nobody there to really take care of you, and I made you my people. Okay. And I gave you the resources to live, so much so that you grew up. You, like he says, you multiplied. You grew as the bud of the field. You became great. You look good. And once again, the analogy is like to like a baby growing up into a nice, beautiful woman, right? Jeremiah 6:2. I have likened the daughter of Zion unto a comely and delicate woman. So he's saying here, the Lord's saying, I took care of you, nourished you. to where you grew. Okay? As where before you were naked and bare and out there. That's how the Lord is describing how Israel was before he came there and, basically took us and made a covenant with us, and we became his people, and then so on and so forth. And he really established us, gave us a home, all of that. Now, let me see. I believe the precept that came to mind here is Deuteronomy 7. Let's take a look here. There we go. Deuteronomy 7:7. It says, the Lord did not, actually verse 6, for thou art an holy people unto the Lord Yahweh thy God. The Lord Yahweh thy power hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people. So here in Deuteronomy, Moses was saying, look, the Lord didn't select you because of your size, because you were like the most, that had the greatest population, but because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, hath the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Okay? So let's keep on going. Verse 8. Now, when I passed by thee and looked upon thee, behold, thy time was a time of love. And I spread my skirt over thee, and covered thy nakedness. Yea, I swear unto thee, and entered into a covenant with thee, saith the Lord Yahweh, and thou becamest mine. So what happened in actual physical sense? The Lord took us out of captivity, took us out of from being bondmen, and made a covenant with us, and we became his people. We entered into a covenant with the Lord, and we became his people when he became our God, right? Officially. Verse 9, then washed I thee with water, yea, I thoroughly washed away thy blood from thee, and I anointed thee with oil. I clothed thee also with broidered work, and shod thee with badger skin. And I girded thee about with fine linen, and I covered thee with silk. I decked thee also with ornaments, and put bracelets upon thine hands, and a chain on thy neck. So what's the Lord saying here? He's saying, I took you, I made a covenant with you, and I gave you everything you needed to not only survive, but to live comfortably. So, and as we're going to keep on reading, right, in the physical sense, the Lord gave us a land, right? He gave us, a rich soil and minerals and all of these things to be able to flourish. But in the analogy, he's likening it onto all these ornaments and these jewels that he's given onto this woman, with being Israel. Verse 12, and I put a jewel on thy forehead, and earrings in thine ears, and a beautiful crown upon thine head. Thus wast thou decked with gold and silver, and thy raiment was of fine linen, and silk, and broidered work. Thou didst eat fine flour, and honey, and oil, and thou was exceedingly beautiful, and thou didst prosper into a kingdom. See? So the Lord took us into a land, like he said, a land flowing with milk and honey, right? Drove out our enemies from before us, and then gave us the richness of the land. Like it says, and thou didst prosper into a kingdom. Now you had the nation of Israel, the kingdom of Israel. And thy renown went forth among the heathen for thy beauty, for it was perfect through my comeliness, which I had put upon thee, saith the Lord Yahweh. So because the Lord's Spirit was with us, we were known. Nobody would mess with us. All right, we were good. Verse 15, but thou didst trust in thine own beauty. So here's where things take a turn, right? So after the Lord says, look, I established you. I took you out of captivity. I took you out of that low state where nobody else was there to hear you or look out for you. I made a covenant with you. I brought you into a land. I established you. And you were good until you weren't. Verse 15, but thou didst trust in thine own beauty, and playest the harlot because of thine renown, and pourest out thy fornications on every one that passed by. His it was. So the Lord is saying now, you got to a certain point. Matter of fact, here's a good precept that comes to mind. Waxed fat. Yep, Deuteronomy 32 and 15. Let me actually see. Oh, this is a good one. All right, let's start at 12. Deuteronomy 32 and 12. So the Lord Yahweh alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. He made him to ride on high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields. And he made him to suck honey out of the rock, and oil out of the flinty rock, butter of kine, and milk of sheep, with fat of lambs and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats, with the fat of kidneys of wheat. And thou didst drink the pure blood of the grape. Being Israel. Okay, the Lord, these are the blessings the Lord gave to Israel. But Jeshurun, which is talking about Israel, waxed fat and kicked. Thou art waxen fat, but thou art grown thick. Thou art covered with fatness. Then he forsook God which made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods. With abominations provoked they him to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not to the Most High, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came up newly, or that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. See, so when you go back to Ezekiel 16, basically the Lord is saying the same thing here. He's saying that, look, I gave you all of these things, but then you waxed fat and kicked. And you started to trust. See, after you started to flourish, you got comfortable. And you started to think that, you know what? This is of you. You forgot how you got here in the first place. You forgot who it is that gives you the former and latter rain. Who it is that keeps the heathens at bay. That keeps your children safe. You forgot all of these things. Okay? And that's what we're reading here. That thou didst trust in thine own beauty and played the harlot, as we just read in Deuteronomy 32. Meaning that they started to worship these other gods. They started to serve these idols. They started to get complacent, and they forgot about the Lord Yahweh. Okay, and pourest out thy fornications, meaning their idolatry. Okay, fornications in this sense, meaning their spiritual fornication. Because remember that in the analogy, Israel is likened unto a woman, and the Most High being the husband, right? So the fornication is them dealing with other men outside of the Most High, which in the real life context, it means you're worshiping other gods outside of the Most High. Or in this case, the Israelites were worshiping and serving idols and not the God of the Hebrews, the God of the Israelites. It says, on every one that passed by, his it was. And of thy garments thou didst take, and deckest thy high places with diverse colors. And the high places were the places where they would build these altars to serve, and these idols to serve them. And playest the harlot thereupon. And the like things shall not come, neither shall it be so. So basically, they took the resources, the blessings, the riches the Lord gave us, and then used it for corrupt things. Verse 17, it's like you deal with this chick, you've done everything for her. She's living in your crib rent free. You bought her a car, all of these things. And she turns around and uses that car to go and pick up another dude while you're at work. Bring him to your house. Okay? Feeds him with your food. He sits in your couch. Commits adultery with him in your bed. Okay? And then drives him back in your car. She took all the resources you gave her, blessed her with, and used it to commit adultery with other dudes. Verse 17, thou hast also taken thy fair jewels of my gold and of my silver, which I had given thee. Thou madest to thyself images of men, and didst commit whoredom with them. So the gold and the silver that the Lord blessed us to gain from the land, guess what? They took it and they turned it and made it into idols and served them. So that the whoredoms was the idolatry. Verse 18, thou tookest thy broidered garments and coverest them, and thou hast set mine oil and mine incense before them. Mean to offer, sacrifices and offerings unto these false idols or these false gods. My meat also, which I gave thee, fine flour and oil and honey, wherewith I fed thee, thou hast even set it before them for a sweet savor, and thus it was, saith the Lord Yahweh. So here it is. I gave you all these things for you because I loved you. You turn around and use that to serve other gods, to serve idols. Verse 20, moreover, thou hast taken thy sons and thy daughters, whom thou hast borne unto me, and thou hast and these hast thou sacrificed unto them to be devoured. Is this of thy whoredoms a small matter? So all the children, right? Because remember, really, ultimately, what the Lord is saying here is all the children that you have, what were they doing? They were actually sacrificing these children. Okay, unto Molech and Baal and all of these things. The Lord is saying, those are my children. Okay? And you're sacrificing them onto these other gods. Is this a light matter? Is this like you stealing cookie from a cookie jar? This isn't something you just look over or sweep under the rug. Verse 21, that thou hast slain my children. So is this of thy whoredoms a small matter? That thou hast slain my children and delivered them to cause them to pass through the fire for them? So is this not a big deal that you've slain my children, burnt them, because when they cause them to pass through the fire, they burn them as a fire sacrifice to these gods, to these false idols. And in all thine abominations and thy whoredoms, thou hast not remembered the days of thy youth, when thou wast naked and bare, and was polluted in thy blood. So did you forget the state that you were in? When you didn't have anything, getting your backs whipped, okay, crying onto me, hoping that somebody would come and deliver you. Did you forget where you started, where I took you from? As you're committing all these abominations, you done forgot about the one who blessed you to come to this state. I could have left your ass over there. Verse 23, and it came to pass after all thy wickedness, woe, woe unto thee, saith the Lord Yahweh, that thou hast also built unto thee an eminent place, and has made thee a high place in every street. So not only did you took the stuff I gave you, you used it to make these idols. You took the other stuff I gave you to offer sacrifices onto these idols. You took the kids, sacrificed them onto these idols, but that wasn't enough. Right? Thou was also built thee an eminent place, and made thee an high place in every street. You reared up these idols and these places of worship everywhere in the land. Thou hast built thy high place at every head of the way, and thou hast made thy beauty to be abhorred, and hast opened thy feet to every one that passed by, and multiplied thy whoredoms. What is that? When you say a woman is today, that's like saying she's spreading her legs. What does that possibly mean? That she's trying to dance bachata? No. She's spreading her legs, meaning that she's opening up for other men to get in that. Okay? Meaning that she's being a whore. But in this sense, the way the nation spread their legs was by serving these other idols, serving these other gods. And it wasn't just one, as we read in previous chapters in the book of Ezekiel. They worshiping the sun god. They worshiping the gods of the neighboring nations. As it says here, and multiplied thy whoredoms. Verse 26, thou Thou hast also committed fornication with the Egyptians, thy neighbors, great of flesh, and has increased thy whoredoms to provoke me to anger. So you committed, you served the gods of these Egyptians, okay? But like I mentioned before, really the gods of all the neighboring lands and nations, to provoke me to anger, like we read in Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter. Behold, therefore I have stretched out mine hand over thee, and have diminished thine ordinary food. So when the Lord says here, he stretched out his hand over thee, meaning that he's now set his power over you for evil. Okay? Diminished thine ordinary food, and delivered the, meaning that now like we read in previous chapters, to break your food security. So now you're not having that excess amount, surplus amount of food. Now you're having food scarcities, famines. And delivered thee unto the will of them that hate thee, which are the heathens, the daughters of the Philistines, which are ashamed of thy lewd way, which once again are those neighboring heathen nations, okay? Amorites, Hittites, so on and so forth. Thou hast played the whore also with the Assyrians, because thou wast unsatiable. So you weren't satisfied serving the gods of the Egyptians. You went and served the gods of the Assyrians as well. In the context of the analogy, that's like the woman going to commit adultery with an Egyptian, and then also going to commit adultery with an Assyrian. But once again, the woman represents the nation. So the way that they would commit that adultery against the Lord was by worshiping the gods of these different nations. As it says, because thou was unsatiable, you weren't satisfied. It wasn't enough for you. Yea, thou hast played the harlot with them, and yet couldst not be satisfied. You did this, and you continued to do it. That's why it says they multiplied their whoredoms. Verse 29, thou hast moreover multiplied thy fornication in the land of Canaan unto Chaldea, and yet thou was not satisfied herewith. So you serving the gods from Canaan all the way to Babylon, and that's still not enough. How weak is thine heart, saith the Lord Yahweh, seeing thou doest all these things, the work of an imperious, whorish woman. Meaning this woman ain't got no loyalty at all. Okay, let's see what we got. Some words in here. Mal, weak, droop, exhausted, feeble. Okay, we also have, and the heart meaning your mind. We also have here an imperious. Shalatath, imperious, domineering. Let's get some synonyms on that. Imperious. Okay. Asserting one's will over another in an arrogant way. Can we have some synonyms? Bully, intimidate, menace, give orders to, lord over it. Let's go back and keep this in context. It says here, seeing thou doest all these things, the work of an imperious whorish woman, or of a domineering whorish woman, a woman, a whorish woman that is so proud she moves in that domineering way, bossing around others, giving orders around. Okay, so she a top dog in this joint. In that thou buildest thine eminent place in the head of every way, and makest thine high place in every street, and hast not been as an harlot, in that thou scornest hire. And as we keep on reading, you're going to find out basically what the Lord is saying here is that, let me see what we have in some of these other translations. It says here in the NLT, you build your pagan shrines on every street corner and your altars to idols in every square. In fact, you have been worse than a prostitute, so eager for sin that you have not even demanded payment. Aye, my goodness. And it's going to tell you as we keep on reading that the Lord is likening Israel onto such a whorish woman. A whore, like when you deal with like prostitutes, for example, they get paid to do what they do. No pay, no action, right? The Lord is saying here, you're so bad, you ain't even getting paid for this, right? As it keeps on going, it says, but as a wife that committeth adultery, which taketh strangers instead of her husband. So when a woman goes to commit adultery with another man, she's not asking him to, well, I mean, let's just keep it in this context. She's not asking him to pay her. So the Lord is saying here that you are likened onto a woman that's committing adultery, who's laying down with these other men instead of your husband. And that's them worshiping these other idols and these other false gods instead of the Most High, who is our God, right? Verse 33: they give gifts to all whores, but thou givest thy gifts to all thy lovers. Meaning, it says, and hirest them, that they may come unto thee on every side for thy whoredom. So you're so bad, you're going in reverse. A whore gets paid. A whore, they give her gifts. Okay? The lovers of a whore, they give her gifts. If you got like a woman that got a sugar daddy, he's buying her things, he's paying for all these things, and she's giving him play. The Lord is saying here, you are the whore that's giving your lovers gifts and hiring them. Imagine a prostitute saying, I'm gonna pay you to come, let me give you some action. What type of shit? It says that they may come unto thee on every side for thy whoredom. And the contrary is in thee from other women in thy whoredoms, whereas none followeth thee to commit whoredoms. And in that thou givest a reward, and no reward is given unto thee, therefore thou art contrary. Meaning that, like I just explained, you're contrary. You're like the opposite of other women who are whores. Meaning, people don't follow you to commit whoredoms. You go to them. Okay, you give them rewards. They don't give you rewards. You give them payment. They don't pay you. So you're like a reverse whore. Verse 35, wherefore, O harlot, hear the word of the Lord. So now the Lord said, look, and from the beginning of the verse, as we were reading, the Lord said, I took care of you. You became this nice, beautiful woman. Now the Lord is just referring to you as a harlot, because that's how he sees, now and back then, the nation of Israel, because of the wickedness that they're doing. Heavily be in idolatry, which serving other gods is to the Lord like you're committing adultery against him. Like if your woman went and slept with not just one or two or three, but God knows how many men. And not like they're coming to her, sliding in her DMs, trying to persuade her. She's going after them. Verse 36, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thy filthiness was poured out, and thy nakedness discovered through thy whoredoms with thy lovers, and with all the idols of thine abominations, and by the blood of thy children, which thou didst give unto them. So your filthiness, your whoredoms, it was poured out. It's completely out there. Okay, your nakedness discovered through thy whoredoms with thy lovers. So through the worshiping of these other gods, right? And with all the idols of thine abominations, because they are abominable to the Lord. It's against the law to serve other gods outside of the Most High. And by the blood of thy children, meaning the sacrifices, right? The child sacrifices they were doing, which thou didst give unto them. because they were sacrificing their children onto these gods, onto these idols. Behold, therefore I will gather all thy lovers, with whom thou hast taken pleasure, and all them that thou hast loved, with all them that thou hast hated, I will even gather them round about against thee. So them lovers are these heathen nations, right? Because it was the gods of these other nations that Israel was going and serving. So the Lord says, the ones that you loved and hated, I'm going to gather all of them against you, and will discover thy nakedness unto them. So you're going to be exposed. They're all going to see the condition that I'm going to put you in, that they may see all thy nakedness. And I will judge thee as a woman that break wedlock, or as women that break wedlock and shed blood are judged. And I will give thee blood in fury and jealousy. Because once again, going back to the analogy, Israel is likened unto a woman that has broken wedlock, because you've committed adultery, you've cheated against your husband. Now, I think in the law, let me see, adultery. Let's see if it actually says the judgment for it. Let's see. Bible verse, judgment for adultery. There they shall be put to death, but I want to know if there's a specific way that they would put them to death. All right, so it doesn't. All right, and the precepts aren't really coming to my mind right now as to what it is. I mean, it does say that they're going to be put to death, but there's some verses that'll tell you like they shall stone them that they die or something like that, you know. But in this case, the Lord says, I'm going to judge you like women that break wedlock. They're going to be put to death because that's adultery, right? And I will give thee blood in fury and jealousy. And I will also give thee into their hand, right? The lovers, these other nations, and they shall throw down thine eminent place, and shall break down thy high places. And in this particular instance, the heathen nation that was spearheading this was the Babylonian Empire, all right, which on a national level they were being ruled by the Assyrians. Okay, so technically, remember, the Assyrians was also one of the nations that was mentioned as part of the lovers, right? It says here, and they shall throw down thine eminent place, and shall break down thy high places. They shall strip thee also of thy clothes, and shall take away thy fair jewels, and leave thee naked and bare. And that's what they did. They came up in there, put us in captivity, took took all the good things from the land, right? Took all the vessels and all of that. I think it's that 2 Kings 25. Yeah, 2 Kings 25. I'm just gonna get straight to the point. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 12. But the captain of the guard, this is when the Babylonians came in and destroyed Jerusalem. The captain of the guard left of the poor of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. And the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases, and the brazen sea that was in the house of the Lord, did the Chaldeans break in pieces, and carry the brass of them to Babylon. And the pots, and the shovels, and the snuffers, and the spoons, and the vessels of brass wherewith they ministered, took they away. And the fire pans, and the bowls, and such things as were of gold, in gold, and of silver, in silver, the captain of the guard took away. And then it keeps on going more and more and more. So they came in there, and like the Lord said, right, he was going to cause them to strip thee also of all thy clothes, and shall take away thy fair jewels, and leave thee naked and bare. Remember when we were reading in the verses above, these jewels and these clothing, these were in the analogical sense representing the things the Lord blessed us with in the land, the resources, the minerals, all these things, right? So when these more specifically when the Babylonians came in, that they destroyed Jerusalem, they made it bare, destroyed the buildings, broke down the altars, burnt the place, and took all the precious ornaments, the gold, the silver, and all of that with them. So Jerusalem was left naked and bare. Verse 40, they shall also bring up a company against thee, and they shall stone thee with stones, and shall thrust thee through with their swords. When a woman breaks wedlock, they put her to death. One of the means is by that, being stoned, right? And you would have the group of people, and they would stone her ass, right? In this case, the Lord is saying, like he says, I'm going to judge you as women that break wedlock. So I'm going to bring this nation against you. They're going to destroy your buildings and all that. They're going to leave you bare. And they're going to stone you with stones and thrust thee through with swords, which just represents the destruction that they were going to bring to Jerusalem. Okay? Because when the armies came in, they didn't come in having slings with stones necessarily. They would come in with arrows and bows and spears, shields, swords, and those kinds of things. Verse 41, and they shall burn thine houses with fire, and execute judgments upon thee in the sight of many women. And I will cause thee to cease from playing the harlot, and thou also shalt give no hire anymore. So when the judgment came, that's what they did, right? They burnt the houses, they burnt the buildings, and like the Lord says, and execute judgments upon thee in the sight of many women, which were just the neighboring nations and cities that would witness this judgment that the Lord is going to bring. And I will cause thee to cease from playing the harlot. Yeah, because they were killed people, they broke down their altars. Okay, but the Lord is saying here, I'm going to punish you so you can learn to not do this anymore. And thou also shalt give no hire anymore. Yeah, because you're going to be in captivity. Verse 42, so will I make my fury toward thee to rest, and my jealousy shall depart from thee, and I will be quiet and will be no more angry. So once the Lord has executed that judgment, he's gonna calm down now. His wrath is gonna be appeased. But he's saying, until I do that, I'm not having it. Because thou hast not remembered the days of thy youth, but hast fretted me in all these things. Behold, therefore, I also will recompense upon thy way, or recompense thy way upon thine head, saith the Lord Yahweh. And thou shalt not commit this lewdness above all thine abominations. So because you didn't remember the previous way, you didn't remember me, you forsook me, stressed me out, pissed me off, I'm going to recompense this upon you. I'm going to bring this judgment upon you for the wickedness that you've done, so that you don't do it anymore. In verse 44, behold, every one that useth proverbs shall use this proverb against thee, saying, as is the mother, so is her daughter. So now as we're going to read on down from verse 44, the Lord is saying, he's given a proverb, right? To say that for anybody that uses a proverb, this is what they're going to say about you. It says here, as is the mother, so is her daughter, right? And who was the mother? Oh, in this case, would be like, what was it? Thy father was an Amorite, thy mother a Hittite. So really Canaanites, okay? It says, verse 45, thou art thy mother's daughter, that loatheth her husband and her children. Because in this case, what did she do? She committed adultery against her husband, and she sacrificed her children. And thou art the sister of thy sisters, which loathed their husbands and their children. Your mother was an Hittite, and your father an Amorite. Now, in this case, when it's talking about the sisters and so on and so forth, it's basically lumping up in this proverb, lumping up Jerusalem as like a family with the Canaanites, or the nations dwelling within the land of Canaan here. And it's gonna elaborate a bit on that. When I say that, I mean that because they all dwell in the same region, okay, it's referring onto that whole entire region as the mother, and the different parts of that region as like the sisters. Okay, so it says here that loatheth her husband and her children, and thou art the sister of thy sisters, which loathed their husbands and their children. Because guess what? They were also doing the same thing. Where did you think that Israel learned about sacrificing their children to these different idols from? The neighboring nations. So do you not think they were doing that as well? But the problem is, even worse, Israel didn't stop after learning it. They learned it, took it, remixed it, and made it worse. Verse 46, and thine elder sister is Samaria, she and her daughters that dwell at thy left hand. Now, when it says here at thy left hand, if we look up here, land of Israel in the Bible. See if I can get a decent. Here we go. So you have Jerusalem, let's say down in here, right? You have Samaria up here, which is one of the sisters that is mentioned. And it's going to mention another sister, which is going to be Sodom and her daughters, which is going to be down here. So when it says Samaria, thy sister at thy left hand, it means north, because in this case, it's speaking in the sense that you're facing the east. Okay, you're looking at the east. So your left hand would be north, your right hand will be south. Okay. So coming back to Ezekiel 16, it says here 16 and 46, and thine elder sister is Samaria, she and her daughters that dwell at thy left hand, right, which is north. And thy younger sister that dwelleth at thy right hand is Sodom and her daughters. So Samaria and the neighboring cities and so on and so forth, and Sodom and the neighboring cities down there. These are the sisters, because these are like the bordering nations right next to Jerusalem. Not meaning that they're all of the same lineage. Yet hast thou not walked after their ways, nor done after their abominations. But as if that were a very little thing, thou wast corrupted more than they in all thy ways. Meaning, when it says yet hast thou not walked after their ways, nor done after their abominations, it doesn't mean that Israel weren't practicing or wasn't practicing the customs of these nations. What it means is that you did it, but you did it to infinity and beyond. You didn't do it at the level that they were doing it. That's why it continues to say, but as if that were a very little thing. So as if you just doing the same things they were doing was a little thing. Thou was corrupted more than they in all thy ways. So you didn't just do what they did and stopped. You went above and beyond. As if what they were doing was a small matter. As I live, saith the Lord Yahweh, Sodom, thy sister, hath not done, she nor her daughters, as thou hast done, thou and thy daughters. So the Lord is saying here, the nations in Sodom and those neighboring cities, with all the wickedness that they were doing, they didn't even do it like you doing it. Behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom. Now remember that this is an analogy, this is a proverb. So the Sodomites, right, the people and the inhabitants of that region, the heathens that were over there, are not actually the physical sister of Jerusalem. They're different people. Okay, but this is a proverb that is to highlight the iniquity, okay, of Israel, of Jerusalem. Behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom: pride, fullness of bread, and the abundance of idleness. What happened? How can fullness of bread become an iniquity? Gluttony, and the abundance of idleness. because an idle mind, as they say, is the devil's playground, was in her and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. And they were haughty, meaning they were proud, and committed abomination before me. And what were some of the abominations we know that they were committing? Okay, mainly sodomy. Okay, and of course they had to be worshiping other idols. They had to be also performing these sacrifices and so on and so forth. Therefore I took them away as I saw good. Neither hath Samaria committed half of thy sins. So you see the emphasis here is saying the Sodom and the neighboring cities over there, they were bad. But they weren't even as, like, you just went above and beyond. They couldn't even compare to you. Samaria the shit they did over there is like half of the things you're doing. That's how far gone you are. Right? Neither hath Samaria committed half of thy sins, but thou hast multiplied thine abominations more than they, and hast justified thy sisters in all thine abominations which thou hast done. Meaning that in comparison to Jerusalem, these nations looked righteous. With all the wickedness that they do, compared to you, you make them look justified. You make them look righteous. Verse 52, thou also, which hast judged thy sisters, bear thine own shame, for thy sins that thou hast committed more abominable than they. They are more righteous than thou. Yea, be thou confounded also, and bear thy shame, in that thou hast justified thy sisters. All in all, to say that with how wicked you are, you've made them look good. You've made them look righteous. When it says they are more righteous than thou, it doesn't mean that they're actually righteous. It just means, it's just to put emphasis on the point of how far gone you are. Okay? Verse 53, it's like, how do I put this? Let me put it like this, right? If you are somebody that does not like vegetables, you don't like vegetables, it's not your cup of tea, right? And you got the option of, like, I don't know, maybe like some, and this is just for example's sake, maybe like cheeseburger or whatever. Maybe you're somebody that likes junk food, right? Some cheeseburger or whatever versus a salad. You gonna say, look, I'm gonna go with that cheeseburger. I don't like that salad, right? The salad don't taste good. But now, what if you were to say your only two options are now a salad or a pile of hot shit that came out of some old raggedy dog's ass? All of a sudden, the salad looks good now, right? The same salad that before was not looking too appetizing, you're gonna take that because of what it's being compared to. That pile of shit, that hot pile of shit, is making that salad look real good right about now. So in this case, it's not that what the inhabitants of Sodom or Samaria were doing was good, but in comparison to how bad Jerusalem was doing it made them look righteous. That's pretty much what it's saying here when it says thou hast justified thy sisters. When I shall bring again their captivity, the captivity of Sodom and her daughters, and the captivity of Samaria and her daughters, then will I bring again the captivity of thy captives in the midst of thee. Yeah, because keep in mind that when they were taken into captivity, it wasn't just just Israelites that were taken captive. When the Babylonians came and they conquered and they took over the land, yeah, they took captives of even some of the neighboring nations. Okay, but the Lord is saying here, when their captives come back, because ultimately, how were we allowed to come back as captives? Cyrus, right? Cyrus gave that decree, but his decree was not actually exclusive to only Israelites. When you read on the Cyrus cylinder, see if I can find that real quick. Cyrus cylinder. What can we find on here? Okay. The freedom. trying to find the bulk of it here. Let's see. All right, let's see. Cyrus cylinder, allowing exiles to return. Yeah, it says here, the Cyrus cylinder, Edict of Cyrus, right? The Cyrus cylinder, an ancient clay cylinder inscribed with a declaration in the name of Cyrus, referring to restoration of temples and repatriation of exiled peoples, has been taken by many scholars as corroboration for the authenticity of the biblical decree contributed or attributed to Cyrus, which was the case, right? But it wasn't just Israelites that were allowed to return back, because they weren't the only captives or the only exiles. Okay, so in that sense, right, the Lord says when they come back, when the captives of their land come back to their land, the captives of your land are also going to come back to your land. Right? Verse 54, that thou mayest bear thine own shame and mayest be confounded in all that thou hast done, in that thou art a comfort unto them. What that means is that you're going to be ashamed of all the things you've done, but you're going to be a comfort unto them because they've done wickedness. But when they look at the shit you've done, it is going to make them feel better about themselves. Oh, at least my shit ain't that bad. Okay, that's the point being made in this proverb. Verse 55, when thy sisters, Sodom and her daughters, shall return to their former estate, and Samaria and her daughters shall return to their former estate, then thou and thy daughters shall return to your former estate. Now, keep in mind here, it says thy sisters, right? Now, when you actually deal with, like in the book of Jeremiah, for example, there are times when Israel and Judah are referred to as sisters, which makes sense because it's two kingdoms, the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom, right? So they're referred to as sisters. But in this case here, it's saying that Jerusalem has two sisters, right? Sodom and Samaria. And when you look into, as we're going to keep on reading here, because there's a part that's going to come up, but as we read here, these Sodom and Samaria are not, like, these are heathens, okay? But this is just a proverb that the Lord is given here. When you read in some of these commentaries, they go off because they're trying to tell you that, well, let me get to that verse and then I'll explain here. But they go off because they try to use a verse in here to sort of say that this is like a foreshadowing of these heathen nations basically being allowed to be grafted in. So we're going to get to that, right? So it says here, verse 56, for thy sister Sodom was not mentioned by thy mouth in the day of thy pride. Basically meaning that she wasn't had she was basically referred to like a byword. Okay, you look down at them because of the wickedness they were doing in the day of thy pride, right? Before thy wickedness was discovered, as at the time of thy reproach of the daughters of Syria and all that are round about her, the daughters of the Philistines, which despise thee round about, right? Because we became a reproach to these nations. Ezra says that, right? How is it that we being the top nation have now become a reproach, a byword and a proverb to these nations that are round about? Verse 58, and thou hast borne thy lewdness, borne meaning to carry, thy lewdness and thine abominations, saith the Lord. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I will deal even with thee as thou hast done, which has despised the oath in breaking the covenant. Yeah, so for your disobedience, for you breaking the oath, now in the analogy, that's like the woman breaking wedlock. But in reality, that's us breaking that covenant we made with the Lord. So the Lord said, I'm going to deal with you accordingly. Nevertheless, I will remember my covenant with thee in the days of thy youth, and I will establish unto thee an everlasting covenant. Because remember, the Lord made a covenant with us. He's going to remember it. Even though we broke it, he's going to remember it. And as it says, establish unto thee an everlasting covenant. And that is going to be, as we read about in the New Testament as well, when the Lord, starting with the elect, puts the laws, statutes, and commandments in the inward parts so that we become perfect and we don't go off again. Verse 61, then shalt thou remember thy ways and be ashamed. When thou shalt, when you remember the way you were, the wickedness you used to do, you're going to be ashamed. Verse 61, when thou shalt receive thy sisters, thine elder and thine younger, and I will give them unto thee for daughters, but not by thy covenant. So this part right here is where they try to say that Jerusalem receiving thy sisters, being Samaria and Sodom, okay, and the Lord says, I will give them unto thee for daughters, but not by thy covenant, meaning that this is like a foreshadowing of the heathens, right? Because that's what Samaria and Sodom representing would be given onto Jerusalem as daughters, so they would be allowed to come in, which is why Paul said that there's no Jew nor Gentile, no difference between the two. That's not the case. Okay, when they're given onto us as what does it say? I will give them unto thee for daughters. We're gonna have the rule over them. Okay, we're gonna have the rule, the dominion, the power over them. They're not gonna be grafted in. That's not the case. And that's why it says, but not by thy covenant. Now, if it makes sense that it wouldn't be by the covenant, because these heathens are not a part of the covenant. Okay? The covenant of the Lord is made between the Lord and Israel. These heathens are going to be subject unto us. They're going to follow our laws, statutes, and commandments, but we're going to have the rule over them, which is what the scriptures say concerning the kingdom. Verse 62, and I will establish my covenant with thee, and thou shalt know that I am Yahweh. That thou mayest remember and be confounded, and never open thy mouth any more because of thy shame, when I am pacified toward thee for all that thou hast done, saith the Lord. So he's saying at the end of the day, I'm going to make you right, and you're going to be ashamed. You're going to remember all the stupid BS you did, and you're going to be ashamed. Okay, after all is said and done. And that's pretty much it on that. So with that, Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. I know it was a fairly long chapter, but Lord willing, it was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Reka Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.